Which are the 3 best cannabis stocks out there? That's what we are going to discuss in this video. Now, first, what do I mean when I say the best companies, right? I'm referring to the companies with the lowest financial leverage, the highest margins, and strongest execution history. These are the companies that I'm looking for. Anyway, when we talk about the cannabis sector, about cannabis stocks, we have 2 main markets. Canada, where cannabis is 100% legal, and the US, where cannabis is already legal in some form in most states, while remaining illegal at the federal level. Now, I will start this video by crossing off the Canadian names, the Canadian companies from my list, and I'm doing so because the American names are simply superior, as they have much better margins than their Canadian peers, as we can see here, gross margin and operating cash flow margin. And moreover, the American names simply have a much bigger market in front of them, which is the American market. For example, Tilray. Tilray is the largest Canadian cannabis company with a market cap of around $1.4 billion, right? And Tilray has a gross margin of 28%, which is the highest in Canada, as we can see here. But that's low when we compare Tilray to the American names over here, which have been delivering gross margins around 50% on average. In contrast, Cronos Group, another well-known stock, has only a 13% gross margin, and Canopy Growth operates with only a 23.7% gross margin. And Aurora Cannabis can't even show a positive gross margin. So these factors make it clear why the Canadian companies don't make the cut, and that's why I'm removing them from my current selection. Now, if you think this was a mistake, please write down the comments below explaining why you think it's a mistake to exclude the Canadian names from our selection, okay? But from now on, let's focus on the American companies. Oh, and by the way, nothing in this video or in this channel is investment advice. Now, as we can see here, Curaleaf is the largest cannabis company in terms of market size, with a market cap of $3.3 billion, followed by Green Thumb, by Trulieve, and finally by VRNOF Holdings. Curaleaf also has the highest revenue at $1.3 billion, though most of these companies have revenues around $1 billion. In terms of gross margin, Trulieve delivered the best results last year in 2023. Trulieve also delivered a strong operating cash flow margin at 17.8%. However, in terms of operating cash flow margin, Trulieve was outperformed by Green Thumb Industries in 2023, which delivered a 21.3% operating cash flow margin. Now, in terms of financial leverage and insider ownership, Trulieve stands out here with the highest insider ownership at almost 20%, with CEO Kim Rivers holding almost 10% of the company herself. This is a positive sign, as it's reassuring to invest in a company where management has skin in the game. Now, when it comes to debt and financial leverage, Green Thumb Industries is the least leveraged company, with a net debt to operating cash flow ratio at only 0.4 times. And in this case, lower is better. Trulieve comes next as the second least leveraged company here, followed by VRNOF Holdings. Now, looking at the evolution of gross margins for these companies, Trulieve has delivered the best gross margin over time, as we can see here, though it declined from 75% to the current 50%, though it's important to note that most of these companies experienced some margin decline. Nowadays, all these companies are delivering gross margins around 50%, which honestly is quite good. And I believe these margins can even improve over time. After all, it's likely only a matter of time before cannabis gets rescheduled and fully legalized, alleviating several burdens for these companies, This includes the heavy taxes imposed by Section 280E, which we discussed in the previous video, and the inability to transport cannabis products across state borders. With cannabis rescheduled, operations will become more integrated and efficient, translating into bigger margins for the industry. On the other hand, increased competition will probably put pressure on these margins. Now, examining the Adjusted EBITDA margins, here we can see that Verano Holdings in blue is clearly our winner. Verano Holdings delivered the highest Adjusted EBITDA margin at 32.4%, but definitely our three performers here are Verano Holdings, Green Thumb, and Trulieve. They all have Adjusted EBITDA margins around 30% more or less, while Cresco Labs and Curaleaf have lagged behind with lower Adjusted EBITDA margins, though they have been improving, as we can see here in this chart. Now, examining the profitability of these companies, as we can see here, these companies are not profitable at all, right? So if you don't like to invest in unprofitable companies, well, cannabis stocks might not be for you. For example, Trulieve ended 2023 with a huge loss. But to understand what's really happening, we need to take a closer look at each of these companies' financials. So for example, if you look at Trulieve's 2023 financials, you will see that they delivered a net loss of $526 million, right? But this loss includes $307 million on impairment of goodwill, which you can add back. Now, if you also add back depreciation and amortization, which represented in 2023 an expense of $109 million, their net loss would be much less bad. But that's very important to have in mind, that these cannabis companies are not profitable companies yet. It's also important to have in mind that these companies have been diluting a lot shareholders in order to finance themselves. Anyway, ultimately, looking at the cash generation of these cannabis companies, right, we can see that Verano Holdings initially stood out due to its high operating cash flow margin, but today the highest margins belong to Green Thumb Industries and Trulieve. But these companies, Verano Holdings, Trulieve, and Green Thumb Industries, have been consistently generating cash flows every single year since 2020. And I really like this. That's a very positive sign. So after examining all these factors, which stocks do I think are the best? Well, honestly, for me, Verano Holdings, Trulieve, and Green Thumb Industries. These are the companies with the highest insider ownership, the lowest financial leverage, and the highest margins. Well, let me know what you think down in the comments. Now, knowing which stocks are the best is very helpful, but it's equally important to determine if these stocks are trading at reasonable prices. After all, you can buy the best business in the world and still lose money if you overpay for it. So in the next videos, we will dive into each of these companies, evaluating them individually to figure out if they are reasonably priced and worth buying. Well, that's it for today. See you next time.